Welcome, my friend, to Next Level Change Success. I'm Therese, a change strategist and practitioner with over 20 years of experience designing and delivering impactful change programs across various industries. In this podcast, I share real-world practical strategies to help you create and deliver positive change experiences, whether you're a leader, practitioner, or someone looking to bring new ways of working to life. In today's fast-paced world, change is constant. Here we focus on how you can put people at the centre of your change strategy, because people with a sense of purpose are the most important link in driving performance. So if you're ready to create meaningful change and achieve all the success that comes with it, keep listening. Together, let's change the conversation and take it to the next level. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Change Success. My name is Therese and I'm the founder of myvirtualchangemanager.com. I'd like to acknowledge that I am recording on Tharawal country and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which I am recording, and to elders both past, present and emerging. So we're here in November 2025, and today I want to talk about the last push of the year that would be happening for organisations. And from a change perspective, what does that mean? Part of it's this concept of reading the room, so understanding the level of tiredness that people might have just before the end of the calendar year. We're going to be heading soon into what we say the silly season, a lot of social events happening, a lot of end-of-year activities and wrap-ups, and delivering change at this point in time may not be the best option. If your organisation is, I think, smart enough, then they'll really be blocking out December as a month of low activity and change or transformation need, because it is the silly season and because of end of year fatigue that traditionally a lot of people have. There will be an excitement in the Northern Hemisphere, which I've experienced before, around the festive season and the holiday season. And in the Southern Hemisphere, absolutely, because of summer, daylight saving, longer days, the social season really starts to pump from end of November, really. And there's a couple of key national activities that happen in November, such as Melbourne Cup Day, whether you're a fan or not. It's these activities that start to signal that we're heading towards the end of the year, and that can generate a lot of excitement for the teams and for your organisation. And people will be feeling the fatigue. So it's important to consider that when looking at launching change. If you've obviously had momentum up until this point, that's a great thing. Engagement, time to launch. November is always a busy month. If you have an enterprise change plan or change roadmap, then you get an idea of how many things will be happening in November that actually need to embed in December and be bedded down before the end of year. Depending upon your financial cycle, December's the end of financial year, obviously for some organizations where that's the end of the fiscal year. But definitely, again, this is about cycles, understanding cycles, dependent upon what industry you're in. This could be heading into peak season, the Black Friday sales starting to ramp up in the retail space, but then also thinking about hospitality, December being a prime time because of all of these activities. So these are the things to consider when looking at implementing change. And what does it matter? So if you've been in an organization and you've rolled out change in December, what has that meant? Well, it has meant a lot of embedding, if not having to revisit, relaunch, look at and revamp again processes, systems, make sure that things have, and if you're doing major transformation, that things have been well considered. By putting something in December, you can really run the risk of having poor embedment for your change a tail and maybe never hitting the adoption levels that you would ideally like. So it could cause a lot of pain. Not to mention that the hypercare period or the support period will be extremely diluted because of low staffing levels, people taking leave during that time, spending time with family, friends as they should, because of school breaks, etc. So dimensions of your workforce are also going to really play into this as to leave levels, etc., etc. So much to consider if you are not delivering in November, and really have the discussions, because recommendations typically should be leaning towards the beginning of next year when people are back on board, refreshed hopefully from any breaks that they've had, and momentum starts again in the workplace. If not, then, as I said, inefficiency in adoption, excessive effort required to actually land the change and achieve the adoption levels that you want. So they're the options really that lie in organizations. Now, part of this is about cycles. I mentioned it before, the cycles of the year, the ebbs and flows, and understanding those in organizations. And the rhythms will be different dependent upon the industry that you're in. But even at the very basic levels, and I think if you've got children who are at school, you know that at the end of term they're tired. It's very, very similar for us as adults in the workforce, dependent upon leave periods that people have had or not had throughout the year, the change that's happened in the organisation throughout the year. So if you've had structure changes, or if you've had different levels of scrutiny in your organisation or bad press about your organisation, they're the key contributors to more stress, therefore more fatigue. And that's not change, that's just business rhythm and general fatigue that can sit at various levels because of things outside of people's control, let alone programs of work that have been delivered upon or projects that have been delivered, as well as skills and capabilities that have been explored or changes that have happened throughout the year as natural continuous improvement in the business as usual landscape. So the culmination of all of these things is what contributes to what we say is fatigue, mostly often labelled as change fatigue, but that's a simple business fatigue that can happen, and the need for people to take a break, rest and recoup, not be online and have a fake break, as we call it. It's actually to have a disconnect so that they can come back. Oftentimes, senior leaders, at times where they do disconnect, they come back with new ideas heading into the new year. But I do ask senior leaders to get a bit of a reality check at this time of year and walk the floors, just have general conversations, hear what people are saying, which is all part of being able to read the room, see what's happening in the people, culture and wellbeing indicators about leave. Oftentimes a symbol of fatigue is actually conflict that can happen within the workforce. So it's important to have a look at those indicators, hear the narrative, observe what's happening even within your own leadership team, because fatigue's a real thing, because we're human. We're not machines. And even if we were machines, there's that concept of wear out and burn out even in mechanics. So it makes sense to be able to read the room, see the data, understand the cycles and rhythms of your business and work within those constraints to optimize. I am a big fan of a couple of Discovery Channel shows, and one of those Discovery Channel shows is all about the Gold Rush show, which talks about the mining, and I watch the stories of the different mining groups and even Gold Rush Whitewater. I watch those shows with fascination about perseverance, endurance. I'm fascinated with the ability and the logical thinking of those people and the mechanical thinking that the people have around being able to set up the big mining machines, etc., and the human spirit that entails there through hardship. And I think about how the machines, they talk about the machines and the running of the machines, and so they might, towards the end of the year or the end of the season with the impending winter coming, increase some of the rates and speed at which the dirt is getting fed through the machines, for example, or they're getting towards the end of the season and they have more breakdowns because of everything that those machines have endured throughout the year. Now, people aren't machines, first of all, but certainly those machines, they just don't get a break. And there's a lot of things around the need to have people take breaks throughout the year. But even when you get to the end of the season, and so you're at the beginning of the silly season as such, this is when people have to decompress. They need a break. And by then increasing the load out of panic, if there's delivery that hasn't been able to take place earlier in the year, it's kind of that force to try and desperately get gold in that box towards the end of the year. And sometimes that really backfires and can actually render the whole operation useless through a massive and major breakdown, to which then people aren't prepared for, and then they have parts that they can't get hold of because of the remoteness of where the plants are. And this is something that is real in business when organizations might push their people too hard at the end of the year. And I'm not saying that you decrease the pressure or stress on your people. What I mean is when it comes out of optimal zone and into sub-efficient zone, you're just wearing the tread of your people and you're just exhausting people. When they go on break, they often then come back and start to make other choices around their employment because they don't want to go through that again, especially if they've been through 2 cycles of the same treatment. So if it's 1 year and everyone's digging in, not a problem. If it's perpetual and people just see that this is the way the organization is going to be run, those who are high performers will not appreciate the lack of reciprocation and acknowledgement about the work they've put in throughout the year, and will question the decision-making of executives to roll out major things when all it does is wear out and stress people. So these decisions at this point of the year about, are we ready to press go, or are we really pushing, and are we pushing too much, and is there too much risk in relation to this change and transformation, and should we park it to next year if we can, then becomes more critical than ever. So be aware at this point in time about the indicators of your people, whether you feel like you have enough momentum and progress behind your change, and that there isn't too much ambiguity or uncertainty, which increases the risk level when it comes to the change, and whether from an efficiency perspective, you're better off having a shorter tail when it comes to embedding and launching early next year versus trying to push the button now. And only you can explore the options at this point in time and start to consider what you might want to address or start to communicate in relation to your change. But certainly if momentum is not behind you yet, then time is really running out to start to make those decisions. And December really can be a time of high productivity, but in a different way. Planning for next year, making sure that there is a game plan so that as people come back in January, that they're hitting the ground running and they know what they're being tasked to do and asked to do, is also the opportunity that sits at the back end of November. So I encourage you to explore that opportunity. If you're a leader, if you're a change manager, you can get some wins on the board through November and some momentum, but then December and part of January can be very much about making sure that you're ahead of the game and really pumping through February onwards next year. Knowing that in February next year, because of the cycles of seasons and how they affect humans as well, I know that it's very, very exciting heading into the festive period in the Northern Hemisphere. I've been fortunate enough to experience that, and heading up to festive activities, the snow, the cold is really amazing. Then coming from the Southern Hemisphere, obviously there's a lot of social activity that happens because of our long days before solstice in December. And one of the key things is in January that I definitely experienced the sad aspect in the Northern Hemisphere because you're midwinter, Christmas is finished, or the festive and holiday season is finished. And so it can be a bit depressing coming out of that winter. so spirits can be a little bit low. So there must be more effort in bringing more energy to the room. When I talk about reading the room, more energy to that environment if you're going live in February in relation to a major change or transformation, versus Australia or Southern Hemisphere, where things still seem to pump along because we're in our summer season. So seasonal influences do matter and sync in with often business cycles. So you also need to take that into consideration. This is how that connected thinking really does work in change, being able to understand and hear the narrative from people, how they're feeling, the sentiments, not projecting your emotions onto people, more being able to facilitate great discussion and check-ins on a regular basis throughout the year, so it's not a new thing, and seeing the data and seeing what the data actually tells you. Sometimes change practitioners can almost project onto others around an anxiety, too much change, but then when you're talking with the people, they're used to it, they can adapt to it, they're very focused and they know that there's change coming up, so it doesn't deter them, and are very accommodating. So sometimes make sure that you're not projecting onto others. And some of the things I've talked about today are generalizations, but they've been based off my experience. But it's just always about checking in, because as I said, every industry is different. Every employee or team member group are different. So it's important that you have the right listening and you aren't projecting onto them in relation to readiness for change. Let data also help dictate the risk levels as well, if you've got data points that you can monitor throughout the year. I hope this has given you some food for thought. I hope this might have got you very excited about November. I hope that if you've got a change that you're bringing in or delivering or continuing on with, that you have momentum on your side. And then, of course, do options and risk assessments and change readiness assessments to help inform whether your organisation, people or your team is ready for change that you might be delivering, or if you are looking to deliver it in December, whether it's better to park it. Will you be ready? And it doesn't mean that you lose momentum. You can keep momentum going through the festive season in December, but it certainly means through next year you could certainly bring in a more effective change. And that is the decision to make at this time of year. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Certainly come to myvirtualchangemanager.com. We are heading towards the end of the year. Next year we are absolutely running some courses from February. So get on the wait list so that you can hear about when these courses will be available. We are having a big year next year. That's what we are planning for. And this year has been a real year of retrospective review, focus, evolution, and I hope to offer you more and more in the change space from myvirtualchangemanager.com into 2026. Thanks for listening, and remember that change matters because you, your organisation, and your people matter. Have a good day.